What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston podcast network. A little bit of a somber feel today as we reflect on the life and legacy of Bill Russell, who passed at the age of 88 on Sunday. I had a chance to catch up with Brad Stevens. We're going to play you that interview. One of the things I found notable was Brad's first game he coaches in Boston is the same day they unveil a statue of Bill Russell in the city of Boston, right outside Government Center. And, Brad's head's already kind of spinning that day. And then getting to interact with the legends and being part of that festivities, and then having Bill Russell courtside. So we'll get into all that. But just quickly off the top, like a lot of probably our listeners, I didn't get a chance to obviously see Bill Russell play. I watched the same YouTube highlights you all do and marvel at him pretty much leaping over players and what he did defensively. Probably not surprising that you guys know how much I love watching Robert Williams. Watching Bill Russell revolutionize the game on the defensive end was remarkable. And the one thing I will say, from a personal standpoint is, Bill Russell wasn't super present at Celtics games. He would come in occasionally, but it always felt like a moment. And so whether it was a random Celtics game, whether it was All-Star weekend, whether it was out at the Hall of Fame festivities in Springfield, where he often showed up and got inducted as a coach a couple years back, or just the NBA Finals and handing out the trophy named after him because of his finals dominance. Whenever Bill Russell was in a room, there was a presence. And, look, in the NBA, you're always around superstars. And you'll hear Brad Stevens talk about this as well, but it's just a different feel when Bill Russell, the greatest winner in team sports, walked into a room. And so ultimately for me, as I reflect on his legacy on the court, it falls back to, 11 of those 17 banners that hang above TD Garden are because Bill Russell was there. And he set the standard by which all teams here, really in the city of Boston now, is especially in this decade, have been judged by. It's like, they don't put up conference titles, they don't put up division wins. It's all about championship banners. And that was a standard that he set. Go back and look at Bill Russell's stat line. He was never the leading scorer for the Celtics, but his impact, especially defensively, but in just making his teammates better, was paramount to everything. And it's reflected in the championship banners. And you'll hear Brad Stevens talk about it. It kind of lives on today with the way that the Celtics build their team and their hopes for it, and how Brad, and when they were crafting the Butler Way, it was a direct reflection of Bill Russell. And that, that only scratches the surface. What he meant off the court deserves its own podcast. And just remarkable that a human being could be as talented as he was with basketball and using that platform, but stepping back and civil rights and social justice and everything he stood for, everything he went about, Bill Russell did it the right way and had the right intentions at every turn. So the one thing also I'll mention that I get into a little bit with Brad is you knew Bill Russell was in the room because of that laugh. And whether he was on stage at the Hall of Fame and roasting other Hall of Fame centers, the man just had this disarming way of putting you at ease because of his laugh and the way he engaged. Remarkable man. And so I wasn't around him as much as maybe even Brad. Brad said he didn't get a ton of time there, but Brad, for him, it was so important to have those legends, to be a part of it. It's too bad that it feels like we're losing too many Celtics legends lately. But here's my conversation with Brad Stevens, reflecting on the life of Bill Russell. All right, Brad, I just want to start here. What will you take away the biggest part of the legacy for Bill Russell?
Wow. I just think he's the word that I've keep coming to. When we found out, Tracy and I were on a walk, and the word that just kept coming to my mind was standard. Like he's the standard for, the way to play. He was a standard for the way to be a teammate, for the way to use his voice off the court, from the way he treated people and treated, everybody around him. I think the thing that, you have such a different feel when I think you get a chance to know the teammates and the people over the years that unfortunately we've lost quite a few of them here in the recent past. But the way that they spoke about him and his impact, you take whatever's being said about him today, and it's only more glowing. It's just a remarkable winner in every sense of the word. So I don't know that, obviously I think anytime you have a person with his voice and you use it to better things off the floor, that's the greatest impact. But certainly his impact on the court and his impact in the game, he's one of, if not the greatest winner of all time in any sport.
Your first day coaching a game in Boston was that statue day. What was that like? And, from interacting with him and the people around him, and then obviously having to coach the game with him out there.
Well, I wasn't at the statue unveiling long. I was there for the speakers. I got a chance to shake his hand and meet him real briefly, and then just headed back over to TD Garden. And that was the first game for my first home game as a coach. And I've always kind of got a kick out of it because we had a 22 or 23 point lead at halftime and lost. And, he's sitting in the front row, and all I could think about was, people like me won't last very long if that's your audience, and that's what happens. And but I just think, again, statues aren't built for normal people. And as we've said, especially to all of our younger players over the years, special isn't for everyone, and special is totally reserved for him.
And you mentioned him setting the standard. What is it like when you've got those banners hovering above you? And obviously he accounts for 11 of the 17. What is that like, and how much pressure does that add to everybody's job every single day that you play in Boston?
Yeah, I think we look at it more as a privilege that there is great proof that, things can be accomplished with, obviously great talent, but great connectivity, the willingness to play a role. I think the thing about, Bill, that everyone that ever played with him says is he would do anything to win. And that was the most important thing, his team winning. And I just think that, when you have a leader, a best player that's like that, obviously the sky's the limit. But then when you surround him with several other Hall of Famers and obviously a great coach and everything else, what a special super run, like none other, in the history of basketball.
You mentioned that game. How hard is that? Like, the guys associated with winning, and you're kicking away a 22-point lead. I know every time you guys have Celtics legends there, but especially him. I've heard you say in the past you were mad about that, or you felt bad about it.
Yeah, there were a couple games where we had a bunch of people back, and that we certainly felt the need to. You should have it turned up a notch all the time, but that certainly makes you turn it up a notch even higher. But I just think, again, it's, just like fans 10 rows back or watching on TV, when Bill Russell walks in the building, we're all in awe, we're often in rooms with people that are famous, or often in rooms that people that have a lot of Twitter followers and all the stuff now that I guess matters, or doesn't really matter. But when he walks in the room, it's different. And so obviously you want to put your best foot forward. I mean, I go back to when I was coaching at Butler. We were, in the early 2000s, we were trying to define this thing called the Butler Way. That was like the principle of how we wanted to be. And we knew what it felt like when a team played really well together, and we knew what it looked like when it played really well together, but we just couldn't wrap our arms around it or define it. And Todd Licklider at the time was the head coach, and his summer he spent reading Russell's rules, and everything was defined for us. And so half the stuff in our locker room at Butler, in a school of 4,000 in central Indiana, was written and defined by Bill Russell and his runs with the Celtics. And I just think that that's the legacy in the game that I just think is immeasurable. I don't know how many programs have whether they know it or not, have taken his words or taken his lessons and tried to really become a team like he led a team here.
Is it fair to say that that lives on today? I feel like the way you're building this roster, so much of it is based around guys that make each other better. Like, does Bill Russell still have an impact on the modern Celtics?
I mean, yeah, and I think like the reality is that you know, he's one of the elite, one of the special players to ever play the game, and on top of that, he's one of the special teammates, and on top of that, he's one of the special leaders on and off the court. And so you have all these unreal traits all in one person, and you know that's why that, as you said, those banners are hanging there, and you know, in some of my most cherished times, and I didn't get to know him as well because he lived across the country and he was usually in and out. But some of my most cherished times were listening to his teammates talk about him, and listening to his teammates talk about each other. I know we all got the privilege of listening to Tommy talk to all of us in New England for years and years and years, and we knew the reverence that he had for him. But I think that was everyone that played with him, and you could feel that in the way that they talked about him.
So much of what Bill should be remembered for is what he did off the court. How much pleasure or pride do you take in both what the Celtics organization is doing to further those causes? I think about Grant getting involved in the mentor program, Jalen and Jason before the bubble, and all they did for social rights. Like, how important is that for you to see that, again, some of Bill's legacy trickling down to this new generation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you go back to the picture in 1961 of everybody interlocking arms and what that meant even before that, before the bubble, and what that's meant to us as far as talking about, you know, our responsibility as part of the Celtics organization, you know, up and down. And he is one of the most impactful, obviously, athletes, coaches, and certainly off the court of all time. And so just like those banners, that leaves a big responsibility for those that try to, that work here, that play here, that just are a part of it in any which way, to hopefully do things that, you know, that he would be proud of, and that his teammates would have been proud of. And I think that that's something that, you know, obviously we take really seriously, but you know, the whole idea of playing in Boston and the tradition and the banners and the history and all that comes with it, the reality is it's a huge responsibility. And you do feel that because of the people before you, and he's the biggest of all of them.
And last thing, could you hear his laugh? I'll miss that laugh the most, I think. Could you hear that when you're coaching from the sideline when he was bellowing? I mean, I don't know if he'd be laughing during the game, but
unfortunately, he wasn't laughing that night. He might have been laughing at me, but he was far enough away that we didn't hear him. But he had a special smile, special laugh. I love the clip of him telling those five big guys at the Hall of Fame that he would kick their ass, and the laugh that came after it. I mean, that's exactly what you would expect he would be like, right? Like loving, but absolutely, you know, absolutely competitive and wanting to win pretty much against anybody, anytime.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
So I actually remember because Brad comes in, and I mean, can you imagine your first game coaching in Boston? And you got Bill Russell sitting courtside, a former coach, obviously what he meant, and delivering those banners as a player, and you blow a 22-point lead. So luckily, Brad weathered the storm, and but the quest to add to that title collection goes on, and it's too bad. You know, one of the things I found myself thinking last night was the Celtics were so close, and you know, right before we lost Bill Russell to adding to that banner collection. I'm sure that it will be memorialized. Brad was saying there's already plans in the work for a way to pay tribute to Bill Russell next season. I suspect there'll be a number 6 patch or something on the Celtics jerseys, a little motivation and a little reminder of why they're out there. If there's not already enough examples with all those championship banners that Bill Russell helped hang in the rafters. So all this week, we're going to be kind of focusing on Bill Russell. We have a special on Monday night on NBC Sports Boston. Will be replayed throughout the week. We hope you get a chance to catch that. If you don't, We'll have more here on the Celtics Talk podcast. We're going to take some of those interviews with people from around the NBA and put them in a podcast moving forward. So please check back for part 2 later this week. Go like, subscribe, check out all our content on the YouTube page. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk podcast.